Here at Rural Roads, it's important for when we're hosting our presentations in person or online that we recognize the traditional lands our campus is located upon. So we at Royal Roads University are located upon the traditional lands of the Quisepsum and Lekwungen ancestors and families. And it's with great gratitude that we live, learn, work, and play where the past, present, and future scopes of Indigenous and non-Indigenous students, staff, and faculty come together. This is a great time to test out that chat box function. So once again, if you look at that black bar below and click on the chat box icon, the chat box should appear. If you feel comfortable, let us know, where in the world are you joining us from? What world within education do you work in? And if you have any specific questions for us, start popping them in. So as we mentioned, we are here today to talk all things graduate programs developed for higher education professionals. My name is Selena Kunar, and I'm an education specialist here on campus. And I am thrilled to be joined by Dr. Russ Wilde, who's a program head of our suite of higher education administration and leadership programs. Hey, Russ, thanks for being here.
Thanks very much, Selena. Hello, everyone.
We'll hear from Russ again in just a few more slides. Well, you've heard a little bit about who we are, and we'd love to know a little bit more about all of you. So again, feel free to connect in the chat box if you feel comfortable. I see we have one of our wonderful international enrollment advisors, Alana McConaughey, who's kicked us off in the chat box, sharing that she's also joining from the land of the Lekwungen Songhees peoples, and that she's here to help support any questions that come up regarding the admission requirements for international and domestic students. Then she shared some different ways we can contact her as well. We've learned a little bit about each other, so now we're going to learn a little bit about Rural Roads University as a whole, then dive into the programs themselves, run through our admission and application requirements, and then cap off with some time for question and conversations. So again, pop questions in the chat box as they come up for you. We are so excited to engage with you as things come up, but do know we have time set aside at the end if you'd like to kind of sit and listen in first. So with that, this is a very exciting slide. It shows you what our beautiful campus looks like. Here at Rural Roads, being located in Victoria, British Columbia, we're pretty lucky to have a mild climate. So this is a fair look at what Rural Roads looks like year-round. Here at Rural Roads, we prioritize small class sizes and a conversational way of teaching because we believe when your professors or your classmates, our classes themselves become think tanks and learning becomes a way of life on our campus. You'll notice really quickly as a student at Rural Roads that we're not about one-sided lectures or head down furious note-taking, that we're all about sharing theories, exploring different perspectives, and diving into some real world and relevant conversations in our classrooms. And those conversations are so relevant and so with the times because at Rural Roads, your learning is actually informed by your life. Being a university for working professionals means that our students are able to bring real world challenges they're facing in their professional, personal, academic worlds into our classrooms. We work hard to ensure there's no divide between theory and practice, but instead we do real world problem solving in real time. That's really cool because our classrooms are filled with some exciting folks. So you have leaders from folks such as our faculty, who are what we call scholar practitioners. So professors who are not only academic experts in their fields, but folks who are out in the world putting into practice what they teach in our classrooms. Then you have other leaders all the way to your cohort members themselves. At Rural Roads, we very mindfully curate these groups that we call cohorts. So your learning community, your students who you move through the program with from start to finish together. In a few slides, we'll talk about something called flexible admissions. But flexible admissions allows us to create these cohorts where we purposefully bring together folks from varying academic, personal, and professional backgrounds to ensure that we're able to have conversations that complement and challenge your own perspectives and beliefs. Some of the programs we're going to talk about today are what we call our blended learning model. So here at Rural Roads, we pioneered this style of learning where we bring together the best of an online learning environment with short-term learning intensives on campus. So we'll dive more into what that looks like, but that brings us back to this slide and just being able to share that for some of our programs, you'll join us in this beautiful space, and others, we're going to meet you online. And at Rural Roads, we believe that education should transcend location or the walls of our classroom. So let's start talking about the programs themselves so you can understand better the learning we provide here at Rural Roads. So to do that, I will pass the microphone over to you, Russ.
Thanks very much, Selena. Thanks for joining us today, everyone. I'm just going to provide a brief overview of the MAHEAL overall program and the smaller programs that fit within it that we've designed to make really relevant and targeted learning options available for those who are interested in shorter programs, but which can ladder and stack into the larger Master of Arts degree as well, should that be of interest later on. And of course, many people begin the Master of Arts program and follow that through from the beginning. So if we could go to the next slide, please. So this is an overview of the total MAHEAL program. There's the Master of Arts in Higher Education Administration and Leadership, and that's the 2-year program of 33 credits. And then within that, we have some embedded diploma and certificate opportunities that largely take advantage of the courses that are found within the larger program, with one exception that I'll talk about at the end. But that means that we've got the graduate diploma in Higher Education Administration and Leadership, and that's 1 year, 18 credits, and it's essentially the first year of the Master of Arts program, and is an option for people who feel like they'd like to start, but they don't necessarily want to yet commit to the full 2 years. Fully transferable to the full Master of Arts program, though. There's then the Graduate Certificate in Systems Leadership, 7 months, 9 credits, and the Graduate Certificate in Development in International Education, and that's 7 months, 9 credits as well. And all of, well, I should say both of those certificates are taken directly from courses that are in the Master of Arts program as well, so they can be fully transferred later to the Master of Arts program. The exception is, a slight exception, is the Graduate Certificate in Strategic Enrollment Management, and it takes advantage of one of the core courses of the Master of Arts program, but then also has 2 specific, relatively newly developed courses that are specific to strategic enrollment management. And I'll talk about those a little bit later. So if we could do the next slide, please. So if we look at just the MA in Higher Education Administration and Leadership, it's a fully developed, fully formed program for people who are aspiring or existing higher ed administrators. And that can be a lot of different areas of an institution. Some more junior positions, some more senior positions. We have, our cohorts are made up of folks really from across the spectrum of administrative and leadership positions within higher education. Really developed to give you the knowledge and skills that will enable you to function as an effective leader in today and tomorrow's complex post-secondary educational environments. And if we can go to the next slide, I'll talk a little bit about some of the key issues. You can see on your screen right now some of the specific leadership issues that the program has been designed to highlight and develop. We've done our best to really integrate these across the courses. So while there are specific courses addressing some of these key issues, we've also done our best to look at this from a systems perspective and to integrate a lot of these really important leadership issues across the entire program. So things like globalization, leading change, which I know all of us are concerned about, because there is a rapid pace of change, part of it driven by technology, but also driven by emergent issues. We've all lived through what we hope is a pandemic that's coming to a close, but it continues to throw us new curveballs. And so rapid change comes from other kinds of events, not just technology. And so we really have done our best to integrate these and provide our learners with the key leadership skills that will help us all to cope with change and to provide the highest quality educational experiences for our learners across different kinds of higher education contexts, institutions, universities, polytechnics, colleges. Next slide, please. So some of the things that I think are really quite unique about the MAHEAL suite of programs, and especially the Master of Arts program itself, are that we've really tried to make it about big picture systems and integrate things together. So you see in this slide, we do have a course that really is about systems thinking, in which we try to set the stage for pulling all these concepts together. There's also the opportunities to build enduring relationships. We have worked with a cohort model in this program so that people have the opportunity to build strong relationships with their peers across the country and sometimes internationally as well, to learn from each other and to really understand how the context of higher education, while there are a lot of similarities, there are also a lot of jurisdictional, provincial, and institutional contexts that are quite different. And so you get an opportunity to learn from your peers across a broad range of institutional contexts. We've built in a lot of opportunities for enhancing self-awareness. In one of our early courses in the program, we go through an exercise in helping us all to better understand our own leadership tendencies and styles, and how not so much that you can change who you are, but how you can better understand who you are and make that a strong foundation for your own leadership practice in your workplace. We do put a lot of emphasis on working effectively with others in teams and doing a lot of creative inquiry and project-based kinds of learning rather than a more theoretical approach. And we really emphasize the decision-making process as a leader. Oh, I've got a barking dog. Guess he's excited about things too. All right. Ralph, you can stop now. Next slide, please. Okay. You'll see here the program at a glance. There's preparatory courses that everyone takes, and those are you take before you really start, and that's to make sure that everyone gets off on the same footing. So we call it the link, and we also do introduction to academic integrity, but that's to make sure that everybody starts with the same understanding of the tools, the learning management system, processes at the university, that kind of thing. Then there are the required courses, 501, 510, and 550 that you take. I should mention that for 501 and 510, that normally these take place at least partially on campus as part of our residency. During COVID times, we have run these completely online, but we expect that for our next intake, that we will be able to have the approximately 2 weeks during that period where we're together in person, face to face on the beautiful Railroads campus. And then the other required course, 550, is that big picture systems thinking and strategic planning course that's so foundational to all the programs. At that point, there is an opportunity for people to pick whether they want to do the systems leadership or the international education stream of the master's programs. And this is where the courses that define the two certificates take place. And so the cohort does generally split into two groups. Usually we have around 2/3 that opt for the systems leadership and about 1/3 that opt for the international education, but that is entirely a choice that you can make. And then the other place where the program splits is after those courses are done, we have two completion options. And one is a thesis based research option, and the other is a research paper where you take a series of additional courses and then complete a systematic literature review on a topic of your choice. Important to note, the thesis route is, there's only a relatively small number of participants can go through that route. And so there is an application process that takes place in the fall after you start the program, where you work through determining what a thesis project might look for you, and then actually applying to see if it would be possible. That's because of limited resources. We have to ensure that there's a faculty member who is qualified in the topic area that you want to pursue to make sure it's a good option. And so only a fairly small number of people complete through that route. The others will go through the research paper route, which is the choice actually for most of our learners. Next slide, please. So I was speaking of where the cohort splits off and chooses either systems leadership or international education. This is also where the two graduate certificates get defined. And so we do offer the graduate certificate in systems leadership in higher ed. And that starts with that core course in strategic planning and systems thinking in higher education, and then adds two other courses in global and national perspectives on higher ed and leading educational change in higher education environments. And so those three courses together make up a discrete certificate that you can choose to take if you prefer that to start that way rather than with the full program. And then next slide, please. So, and then on the other side, you may choose to do the graduate certificate in business development in international education. That certificate doesn't include the systems thinking and strategic planning core course. Instead, it has three specific courses in higher education: global perspectives in international education, communication and organizational culture in a globalized world, and the business of international education. And it's aimed more at people who are interested in that business development aspect of international education. It's specifically curated, but all those courses do transfer to the MA program. And so if you chose, that would also be a possible place to start in this suite of programs. Next slide, please. And that brings us to the graduate certificate in strategic enrollment management. This is relatively new to our suite of programs, and it does start with that core course in systems thinking and strategic planning, but then adds two other courses that currently by themselves are not part of the MAHEAL program, and so aren't transferable yet because they don't have a place in that full program. They've been developed specifically for the needs of practitioners who are working in strategic enrollment management at institutions. And so they've been developed with one of the real leaders in strategic enrollment management in Canada, Dr. Clayton Smith, and he's currently instructing those courses. And they really are very focused. It's possible that at some point in the future, those might be a transferable part of the MAHEAL program, but for now, HEAL 580 and 585 are standalone parts of this graduate certificate for people with very specific needs in this area. And I think, Selena, that gives us a pretty good overview of the program. Of course, I'm sure there'll be some questions, but we'll address those as they come.
Absolutely, Russ. Thank you. We didn't give you too much time today to spin through all of those programs. So thank you for giving us the deepest dive that we could have in the time you had allotted. As Russ mentioned, please start popping your questions in the chat box. These next few slides, we're going to look at admission at Rural Roads, as well as what does an application to our programs look like? And then we'll start answering some frequently asked questions and what's come up from all of you in our chat box. So to kick us off, let's chat a little bit about standard admissions. So standard admissions into these programs looks for a 4-year or comparable undergraduate degree from a recognized post-secondary institution, as well as a minimum of 3 years of relevant paid work experience within recognized higher education institutions, including some leadership experience. And you'll notice that little asterisk there beside leadership experience. And that's because at Rural Roads, in these programs, we recognize something we called emerging leaders as well. So let me read the definition of emerging leaders we have on our website. So emerging leaders who have a fewer than 3 years of leadership experience, yet have been in recent roles of leadership or people management roles for 2 or more years, demonstrating exceptional leadership potential through their professional and life experiences, and are preparing for further leadership roles, and otherwise meet the criteria for standard admissions, are encouraged to apply. So if you find yourself in that group where you've met the degree requirement, you've been working in higher education, but perhaps haven't been in for 3 years, still connect with our offices. Let's chat about your professional experiences, because this group of emerging leaders is so exciting and adds such a richness to our classrooms. So at Rural Roads, we also have something called flexible admissions. So flexible admissions is for those folks that may not have a traditional academic background, but have been working in the field for a significant amount of years. As we mentioned at the start of this webinar, at Rural Roads, we really value that integrated work, learning, hands-on approach. And what makes that come alive in our classrooms is when we have people who have been working in the field who are able to bring examples from their professional spaces into the classroom. So an outcome of that was flexible admissions. So for flexible admissions, applicants would normally be required a minimum of 7 years of work experience in higher education, including a minimum of 3 years of leadership experience. You'll notice another little asterisk there, and that's because here at Rural Roads, leadership experience can mean many different things. So leadership experience isn't necessarily simply positional leadership. So someone who has manager, director, AVP in their title. At Rural Roads, we recognize roles that you're consulting, negotiating, managing diverse interest groups through relationships in a complex environment, aka higher education, roles in which you lead others towards shared goals and outcome, roles where you find yourself influencing, organizing, and coordinating groups of people, and roles that you've provided leadership experience or you've gained leadership experience from volunteer organizations as well. So if you head to our website, we have some different ways that leadership experience can be highlighted within your past academic, professional, and personal experiences. So don't be too deterred if you see leadership experience and go, oh, I don't know, because more often than not, a lot of our prospective students do have that requirement met. But because you're doing it all the time, you don't really recognize it as leadership experience. You just recognize it as doing your thing. So please connect with us, as we're always happy to have those conversations. I'll note as well that flexible admissions is something that's assessed on a case-by-case basis. So while we have some helpful hints or parameters on this slide, connect with us, because we're always open to having those conversations and exploring what flexible admissions could mean for you. So how actually does one go about applying? Well, with most things these days, it kicks off with an online application. At Rural Roads, that online application comes with a fee of $128 and I believe 81 cents. Once your online application is in, we then look for some supporting documents. So things such as your official transcripts, personal statement, structured resume, and 2 letters of reference. Our website is a wonderful resource to support you putting these documents together. So it has some practical information such as, how long should these documents be? How do I submit them? Who can my referees be? But then it also has lots of helpful hints to encourage the structure of documents such as your personal statement and resume. So for example, our website has some really great guiding questions for what we look for in a personal statement. So some of those questions can be things such as, what can you contribute to the class's learning? What do you anticipate will be your challenge as a graduate student in this program? What do you envision for your professional goals once you've completed this program? So all sorts of questions that can help kick off your brainstorm for the personal statement. And then for your structured resume, we have some handy hints around what sections should be included in that resume to ensure that all of your accomplishments shine bright. Upcoming intakes. This is a very exciting slide. So there's a lot of info here. So let me walk all of us through it. If you're interested in jumping into the Master of Arts program or the Graduate Diploma, which is that year 1 of that 2-year program, in higher education, administration, and leadership, we kick off June 13th, 2022. That puts our application deadline at March 13th, 2022. Moving down to our different certificate options. So for the graduate certificate in business development and international education, where that falls in the program has us starting at October 24th, 2022, putting its application deadline at July 24th, 2022. The graduate certificate in systems leadership and higher education, on the other hand, that begins a little bit sooner, on August 15th, 2022. So its application deadline is a little earlier, putting us at May 15th, 2022. And our graduate certificate in strategic enrollment management has the exact same start date and application date. So August 15th, 2022, with an app deadline of May 15th, 2022. This is a great time for me to share that here at Rural Roads, we accept applications on an ongoing basis. So for example, if you're interested in starting our Master of Arts program, June 13th, 2022, once you submit your online application and your supporting documents are in, we're able to adjudicate your file and let you know about your seat in the program. We're not actually going to wait until that March 13th date and then kind of take a look at everything that's come in. At Rural Roads, if you've satisfied the requirements that we've noted for this program, we adjudicate your file and let you know about your seat. So this is wonderful for future planning, but where that becomes important for planning as well is that our programs can fill up quite quickly. So if you're interested in any of these programs and you're noting their start dates, getting that online application in is a really great way to signal to us that you're interested in a seat in the program for a specific start time. And if you have any questions about that, again, we're always here to help. We had some great questions come in around financial aid, so we wanted to make sure that this slide was here so you had the website and direct phone lines of our financial aid and awards specialists here at Rural Roads. Our specialists are wonderful and they have their fingertips on resources that are available to help fund your continued education offered by Rural Roads University, but offered by external sources as well. And of course, they're able to answer questions on things like loans, awards, research scholarships, and other things that come up as well. As with most institutions, this office really isn't connected with as much as they could be. So if you find yourself interested in pursuing education here at Rural Roads, please shoot them a quick phone call, send them an email, check out the website, because you never know what funding could be available to you. Oh, enrollment services. So I see our chat box has a few notifications on my end, and I know at least a couple of those are Alana, who's been sharing all sorts of helpful links in our chat box. Alana is just one wonderful example of the enrollment team we have here at Rural Roads to help answer any questions you may have about this program or any others on our campus as well. So if you're joining us from within Canada, our enrollment advisors are happy to help at learn.more@ruralroads.ca. And if you're joining us internationally, our international admissions and registration team is eager to continue the conversation at learn.more.international@ruralroads.ca. So with that, we have come to the end of our formal presentation today. So what I'll do is I'm going to stop sharing the slides. So we all have kind of a cleaner screen on our end. And I'm going to open up the chat box to see if we've had any questions come in. So yes, lots of links from Alana. Oh, awesome. Thanks so much, Alana. So we have a question here that Alana has answered in the chat box, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to read it out loud, read Alana's answer, and then Russ, if there's anything else you'd like to add, please do. So we have a question here asking, so one could start with this certificate and then progress to the diploma and then opt to complete the master's in that order. Is there a difference in cost if one does this in smaller parts? And Alana shared that yes, this has been done. It would not necessarily add to the total cost as you're paying per course, and many of these programs ladder into one another. You know, this is a great question. I found myself moving through this path for my education here at Rural Roads. I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to integrate this into my work life, the balance that's supposed to be there. I wasn't sure of my own capacity to take on this level of education, so I started with a graduate certificate. I really enjoyed the learning, so I decided to just continue on with my cohort into the graduate diploma and just fell in love with my cohort and all of the conversations that we're having and just seamlessly continued right into the Master of Arts. So if you have any questions about that pathway, again, always ask us because Alana makes a great point. Some of those courses being embedded in those, your cost will be adjusted accordingly. Russ, did you have anything you wanted to share on that?
No, I think it's an absolutely viable way to go about it, and many people like you, Selena, have done it very successfully. The only slight difference that people might find is that you could end up working with people across two different cohorts during your time. I don't see that as a negative at all. It's just will be a slightly different experience than if you started right at the beginning of the MAHEAL program. All completely viable ways to go about it, and I think both give a great experience.
Oh, absolutely. And as you were talking, Russ, you know, especially for this suite of programs, with our new graduate certificate in strategic enrollment management, we're having the opposite happen, where we've had alumni who've completed the Master of Arts program
Absolutely.
and who now see this graduate certificate popping up and are coming back to take the certificate as a way of continuing to specialize their learning. So lots of different ways people start and end their learning with us.
Absolutely.
Speaking of our learning with us, Russ, a question we get a lot is how much time should I be putting aside if I'm expecting to jump into one of our programs?
You know, it's, and Selena and I have talked about this one before. It's a great question, and it's one that I certainly asked all the time when I was considering my own education. It will depend a lot on your sort of level of preparation and all kinds of things. But I would say that what I have mostly experienced is that people need to have about 10 hours a week that they can pretty consistently put aside to devote to this program. Except for the very beginning of the program, we do one course at a time. The very first part of the MA program is a little bit more intense, and so I would say during that first set of courses, those two, a little more time would be needed, but most of the time about 10 hours. But it will vary a little bit depending on your own circumstances.
Absolutely. And speaking of your own circumstances, Alana's also shared another way our programs are customized to fit your needs. So if you're considering a master's, but not sure if you're going to be able to commit to the full program, another option is to apply, get started, and you'll notice these natural points where the graduate certificate group caps off or your graduate diploma group caps off. So if there is a time where you do need to pause, life is happening, that is okay. You're able, if you've completed the coursework for the graduate certificate, you will be awarded that credential. Same with the graduate diploma, and you're able to come back to Roll Roads and pick up from that starting point and continue on. And as Russ mentioned, you'll be jumping into a new cohort, so you'll make a lot more new friends too.
Yep.
Russ, actually, right before we started this webinar, we were talking about that Russ is teaching a course right now, and it's the course where students are starting to look towards what will they be researching in these completion options. Can you tell us a little bit about the course you're teaching right now?
Sure. Right now, this cohort is at LRNT 506, and that is the course right before you actually do your major research project. And so I'm working with that group right now to select topics and do the initial literature reviews, try and find out if it's viable, and to try and the other interesting thing about this course, which I really love, it's usually new to most folks, but I do love it, is really thinking about what your research methodology and paradigm are going to be, and what will actually constitute a valid way of seeking knowledge on your particular topic, which is a really exciting and important part of learning to be a good, an effective consumer and creator of knowledge. So this is a ton of fun, but usually a little bit new to most participants.
Oh, so cool.
It's a good one. I love it.
I got a question, private message in the chat box, but it's a great question, so I'm going to read it out loud and hopefully provide an answer as well. So for the residencies, is there accommodation available? So yes, if we are able to have our residencies on campus, we do have a limited number of accommodation available at Rural Roads. I'll share they are the old military dorms. So they are not 5-star, but they get the job done. I myself, I live here in Victoria, but when I had the pleasure of moving through an on-campus residency, most of my cohort actually wasn't from Victoria. They were actually from all across Canada and a few from beyond as well. So I did choose to still stay on campus because almost all of my cohort was, and it allowed us to, very seamlessly move from class time to group work time to dinner time to what folks call lounge learning, which I think is so fun. Those moments when you're kind of in your sweatpants, your comfy clothes, you got a cup of something, and you guys are just chatting about what you explored that day. So we definitely have accommodation available. We can pop some links in the chat box, and I can provide them in the follow-up information to how you can go about booking that. We have some rooms that are simply the room, and then there's shared bathrooms, and we do have a few rooms that have the ensuite bathrooms within them as well. So different price points, different types of rooms available, and we can always share all that information with you as well. So with that, it looks like we've come to the end of our conversation today. Oh, Alana has been wonderful and shared some information about accommodations. She shared that we have single occupancy dorm rooms between $35 and $65, plus tax per night, and students can book their accommodations with a self-serve online booking system. More information and an access code will be sent from the program office once you've registered. And then she shared the link. Now, Alana also shared another wonderful note that I'd love to read out loud, that if you're applying to this program or any of our programs as an international student, and the program includes an on-campus residency, we encourage folks to apply 6 months before the program start date to ensure you have enough time to apply for your study permit. And Alana is the perfect person to ask more questions if you have any questions around study permits and things like that. So before we close out, Russ, was there anything else you'd like to share?
Nothing beyond, I'm still relatively new to Royal Roads University. I have absolutely loved my time at the institution. The program is fantastic. The instructors are all experienced scholars and practitioners in higher education leadership. To me, this is the program to take part in if you aspire to leadership in Canada or internationally in higher education. We look forward to having you join us.
There is nothing I can say after that. So we'll wrap up now. Thanks so much for being here, Russ, and to all of you who joined us live and those folks who are watching this recording as well. So we wish you all a wonderful rest of your morning, afternoon, or evening, depending where in the world you're tuning in from and when you're watching this recording. Have a great rest of your day.
Great.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.